Thank you, Sharanjit. And thank you, everybody, for staying behind. I know it's not for me. It's for Kwon Ping, of course. And if at any point I seem to be staring into space or drooling, it's because I'm fangirling. Kwon Ping.
I should have come to this meeting earlier.
Yeah. I did offer gin and tonic, but of course we are sticking with water today. So thank you so much for staying, and I think it's been really exciting. I think the different topics that we've touched on has been quite insightful, I must say, and so changing mindsets in a changing world. So that's our theme, and I'm so very happy to have with me my idol. My idol. Okay, so from his early days as a journalist to building a global hospitality brand with very strong social conscience, Kwon Ping brings really unique insight into how our cultural narratives shift, and it has been shifting over time. We see how allyship is cultivated, and we also want to understand a little bit more about how inclusive leadership can shape both boardrooms and the broader society. So I'm going to just start off with Kwon Ping. You've worn many hats. You're a journalist, you're a businessman, you're a thought leader, a husband and father. So how have your views on gender and masculinity evolved over the years?
Well, that's an interesting question because it definitely has changed. When I was much younger, in my 20s, my then girlfriend and now my boss.
I've got a question on your
Claire.
boss too.
So by the way, she's very far away. She's in Mexico right now with my daughter, but she's got spies all over this room. So please say nice things, okay? I mean, but in those days, when I was in my 20s, and some of you will know Claire's, in those days, there still was a feminist movement. Now it's completely post-feminist. Nobody even calls themselves a feminist. But in those days, many years ago, about almost 50 over years ago, there was such a movement because women were really denied access to so many things. In those days, being also much younger, I had the view about gender equality as being really men and women should be equal. Now, 50 years later, having experienced the big difference between my wife and I, my daughter and her brothers, and my grandchildren, and also having seen years of experience with dealing with women managers and male managers, I would absolutely say that it is a completely false notion that men and women are the same. I mean, one should have known that all along, right? But part of the narrative at that time was men and women should be the same, even to the extent that in work, a lot of women tried to behave like men in their attributes and even dress in pants and so on, because to be more male was more an expression of your equality. Yes. I really have come to recognize that the difference between men and women is huge and should be completely celebrated. Although at the same time, obviously the equality of opportunities, the equality of outcomes should be always the same. But I celebrate that difference in every little way. I see among the women managers and board members, by the way, I've long been an advocate for board diversity, not simply out of the position of equality, but because the women I have seen in our own boards and the boards that I have served on bring a very different perspective. They're not insiders like Old Boys Network. They're very different perspective. I see my grandchildren, the three boys behave in a way that's so different from the one girl who dominates the whole thing. She's very quiet, but she knows how to really control them all. I see how my wife is very, very demure, as an Asian wife should be, but as she's also said very clearly, you are the head of the family, KP, but I'm the neck that controls the head. But I think my biggest change really has to is the recognition that the fundamental difference between men and women, you could say that in the West it's seen as relatively more simplistic, whereas the Asian concept of yin and yang,
Yes.
that they're very different but they reflect two sides of each other. I think that complexity is something to really be celebrated, and I try to celebrate that with the women I know, with the men who I try to get to understand that they should not expect women to behave like them, whether it's in the workplace or outside, because at my age now I sometimes counsel people about their girlfriend-boyfriend problems. So that's my difference in perspective.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think it has evolved over the years. And since you talked about counseling some of your men friends, we talked a lot about male allyship today. So what are your comments or perspectives on male allyship, the whole notion about the male also struggling to have a voice? They feel that, maybe it's an ego thing that they can't show their weakness.
I think, again, this goes back when I talked about how my views on gender equality have changed. I think my views about male allyship has also changed. It used to be, again, back in those days, men were the problem because many resisted the rise of women to be their equals. And so male allyship was really trying to change the mindsets of men to really truly accept your wife, your girlfriend, or your female manager in the workplace as truly an equal, because the discrimination was so latent in most people.
Right.
Today, I think men are also a problem because we need help. I think along the way, in the last 30 over years, there has been so much focus on the issues of feminism, the issues of gender equality, that a lot of men have found themselves left behind. And maybe because inherently women are much more collaborative, and women, you would always see in a setting that women are able to share each other's problems quite easily. But men, even after playing golf or doing other things, it's very difficult for men to open up to each other as much as I've seen women just naturally open up to each other. So a lot of men, especially younger people, teenagers, young men, I think, and it's part of my responsibility as an older male, not to fully understand that young men today have identity crises, possibly even more than women, because all along these last years now, women have formed so many groups to talk about their issues, their problems, and men are left out of it. And many men, young men, feel lost. And part of this, I think I mentioned too, has resulted in words like involuntary celibate, like incel. Has resulted in MAGA men, and men that are lost. They just don't know how you can be masculine and be having self-respect and also treat women with respect. So it takes a lot of self-confidence as a man to say, I have self-respect for myself, I know who I am, but I also respect you as a woman. It takes self-respect to do that. And a lot of men are lost. And being lost, they treat women badly also. So I think we have a lot of responsibilities to think of male allyship now, not in the old terms that women are lost, they're trying to find their position in the world, and we men, being the domineering power in society, are trying to help you find yourselves. Now a lot of younger men in particular need to find themselves, and all of us here, including women in the room, need to understand that men have identity crises, perhaps more than women.
Wow. Okay, men in the room. We've got young men.
The men here are all too old to have identity crisis. I'm talking about teenagers and others like that.
So the teenagers. So
all the teenage men in your room.
There's a young man here. There's a young man there. Yeah, actually what you said was very interesting because I think one of the breaks I had was because my senior boss gave me that break, right? Gave me an opportunity, gave me sponsorship. but I was told not to say that. You know, don't tell people you were sponsored by a man. Yeah, right. Say you did it yourself, kind of thing. So it's very interesting what you said. And we have to recognize that I think we need to sponsor each other. I think this male allyship will probably change to just allyship, right? As in, yeah, it's a more collaborative thing, male and female. And it's a win-win. It's not a zero-sum game. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I agree.
You mentioned your boss, Claire. She's wife and business partner, and she's always right, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, how else could it be?
And of course, Claire is a powerful advocate for women's rights. So how has working alongside her shaped your own mindset on gender issues?
Ooh. Do I have to answer that? How has working... Well, there's two issues to that, I suppose. One is, how has working with Claire shaped my view on women's issues? And the other one that I ask quite a lot, because we're in family business and so on, is how does it feel to be working in a business when you have your wife as your partner and your children also, and the whole dynamics of family businesses? But I would say that working with Claire certainly has given me a lot more insights about various things. One is, on my own side, the natural inclination of men in a male-female situation to be dominant. I don't know whether this is a gender thing or not, but possibly it is, that men are generally more aggressive by nature, biologically so, evolutionary so, and so on. So when we started out in life, and even now, I tend to be perhaps more insistent and dominating, and I try to pull back from that. Otherwise, I get slapped if I don't, so I pull back voluntarily. I've also recognized in Claire trying to find a voice and a role for herself within Banyan Tree, and even in Singapore society, how difficult it is as a woman. Singapore politics is governed by men. Singapore business is governed by men. And I only began to have a sense of this partly by observing her and how she's had to assert herself in ways that might not necessarily be natural for her. And it's quite natural for men to be quite assertive. But she's learned that if you want to get yourself out there, you have to be a bit more assertive. And yet sometimes people would say she's too assertive because she's really not, but because she's a woman, she's expected to be less assertive. So I would say the main thing I have benefited from by working with Claire my whole life is to be sensitized to the issues that women have to deal with, and to be sensitized to knowing what a man gets as a natural advantage, and what we're also like in terms of our natural personality. So more than anything else, it's sensitizing oneself to recognize that a partnership like this between a man and a woman has to be dealt with care. Like, she's always right.
Yeah.
She's always got the last word and everything else.
And I think this is also translated into your organizational culture as well at Banyan Tree and in your business.
Yes, my daughter is the deputy CEO. So between my wife and my daughter, I'm cornered in everything I do, right?
How about in terms of human resource and talent management? Is there like a special track, or how do you, since you're so sensitized and hospitality, there are a lot of women in hospitality, is there something that you've done in your organization that helps to empower these women?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think there is, and I don't want to make, I did say at the very outset, I want to celebrate the biological differences, but at the same time, I want to generalize and make it a stereotype. But I do think women are more collaborative and generally more empathetic than men are. Men are much more assertive of what they want to do and so on. Of course, it's a generalization. But I think in that respect, most of our human capital managers are women because they tend to not project themselves so much out there. They're willing to listen to other people more. And that's one thing about it. But when you ask about how do we empower women in our organization, the business that we're in is not an easy business for someone. If you're going to be a general manager and you're going to move every 4 years with family, it's a very male-dominated business simply because the men move and the women have to follow along. So because of that, unfortunately, many of our successful general managers, and we've pushed up quite a lot, would have to be, in fact, single women. Either they never married or they even got divorces, because moving every few years, it's still a fact of life that most men are not willing to move where the wife is going, but the wife will move where the woman is going. So one of the things we've tried to do is we recognize this problem among our younger managers. So we now have a job swap program that is far more active than most, meaning we recognize that a lot of our very good women leaders are likely to be staying in one hotel or one country, so they won't have the international exposure that a Swiss male general manager would have. But then how do we give them enough opportunity of working overseas so that they can improve themselves? That's through short-term assignments that we particularly create so that they don't have to separate from family, they don't have to have the trauma of having to ask the husband to go along or not, and so on. So we try to tailor programs that we think would help mitigate some of the problems that women managers have. Like, for example, we have a kindergarten in Laguna, Phuket, that's been there for 35 years. It has about 150, now about 300 students. All the children of all our employees, whom we call associates, and we have a lot of them in Phuket, they have free kindergarten. All our hotels have a free childcare center, because that is one thing that's a big problem, not for middle managers who are older, but for your frontline providers like your waiters and your supervisors who are young. What do they do with the children? Because, you know, childcare centers are usually not governmental, they're usually private, and it can be quite expensive. So that helps them. So we try to recognize the actual obstacles to a woman's development, and there are many other, because Claire is in charge of our learning and development. So one of the things that she also tries to do is to get more women to speak out, because generally Asian women in particular are more reticent. So I think you get a drift of what I'm trying to say, that we try to see what are the challenges that women may have that might be cultural, that might be gender-based, might be age-based, and we try to, as much as we can, mitigate these so that they can achieve their potential.
We also talked a little bit this morning about thriving in midlife. I suddenly feel a bit hot here. You know, we often speak of women going through midlife transitions, and I believe men face invisible struggles as well. And so how can society and workplaces like yours better support this whole midlife well-being for both genders?
Well, midlife is a very broad definition. And I'm not sure what you mean by supporting midlife transitions. I mean, do you say men go through andropause while women go through menopause? And what I mean, what can a hotel do about women going through menopause and men going through andropause? I really am not sure what we can do in that respect. But what I do know, though, is that regardless of these changes, one of the issues when we talked about male problems, one of the issues I really see is that at an older age, when people retire, men have a really hard time. Again, because women create social networks of their own. Women see themselves as mothers, as friends, as providers. And so I've seen all across, women do quite well. Men only see themselves as, in terms of their employment. Their sense of worth is so tied in with their job. And when men retire, if you're an entrepreneur, it's okay. But if you're an employee, even senior CEOs and so on, they're suddenly left with nothing to do, and they decline very fast. So that's an area that I see happening in our organization, I see happening with my friends, that women really can transit through life quite easily, because even retirement from work or even your middle age crisis or old age crisis, these are just part of the multiple roles a woman has to play throughout your life. Whereas a man's role, a man's identity is relatively straightforward and simplistic. And I think that's a male problem, and we need help.
I think maybe next year we'll have another topic or theme on helping the male gender. Okay, we also talked about AI this morning, AI transformation and how it is already transforming all our lives. What concerns do you have about gender bias being embedded into these technologies?
Well, there's several approaches to that. First of all, I think we all should not make too big a thing out of AI.
Okay.
There's already talk that there's an AI investment boom, like there was an internet boom, and it's a bubble that's going to burst. I think if anybody is old enough, like I am, to have been very active in the pre-internet era, you would then nobody here, I think, has even known the pre-internet era. So you've lived with it. But for those that, like myself, who know the world when it was pre-internet, when the internet came, it was like, oh my God, this incredible thing is going to revolutionize everything and so on and so forth. Exactly what we're talking about AI today. And no doubt the internet has revolutionized various aspects of life, and AI will, but the whole science fiction stuff about, an AI that's going to be artificial general intelligence that's going to replace human beings and dominate the world, I think that we can leave aside as being science fiction right now. So my view is that any technology that is quite disruptive, as AI, as the internet, and so on, technology is nothing but an enabler of change. And you've got both good change and bad change. So we already saw with the internet, everybody thought it was going to be the best thing for mankind. Nobody knew that it would lead to the kind of social media phenomenon that we are having today. So by the same token, we already know, because of the experience with the internet, that AI can do incredible things in medicine, creating new drugs much faster than human trials can do. But we also know AI can create deep fakes and can do 10 times worse damage to a person and to social relations than existing social media can do. So my only point here is that for those of you who are going to be going through the AI phase, recognize that technology by itself is always neutral. The internet was neutral, AI is neutral. It's what people make of it that's going to be either for good or for bad. And that's always the case. So never think only about the good things. But then we have to start looking forward to what are the bad things that AI can do, and making sure that sufficient action is taken, probably within our own organizations. Because one of the things you will find is that although a lot of people talk about AI regulation, I don't think it's going to happen. Because AI is right in the middle of global geopolitics now. And America wants to be the leader in AI, they want to deregulate. China wants to make sure there's no regulations on AI so that China can be dominant. Now, you mentioned something else about the inbuilt biases of AI. There's an interesting thing here that I'd like to raise, and of course it's gender related too. But one thing is that I remember that a Chinese academic actually said that the biggest challenge in AI is not the development of the technology itself. The speed of AI, the capacity of AI, the reduction of electricity usage and all that, those are technological challenges. The guy said, and this was in relationship to geopolitics, not to gender, but he said the biggest problem is knowledge feed to the AI machine, right? And the knowledge feed, from his point of view, was entirely Western sources. He did a survey that 90% of the world's libraries or available internet knowledge is all originating from the West. So he said, as a Chinese academic, if we want to have AI that is not culturally biased, we must make sure that in the area of politics, for example, the Chinese AI is going to be fed with all the writings of Kongzi, Mengzi, and all the Chinese philosophers. So you can imagine, by the same token, how much of knowledge, as we call it, that is available in the world today on the internet is already gender biased. A lot of it is, probably majority of it is gender biased. So that is one problem that AI definitely has. What you feed it is going to be basically how you train the AI, the knowledge feed for AI preconditions the answers you're going to get. So you'll get a lot of biases already. And that's one of the things we all need to be aware of. Religious bias, racial biases, gender biases, because there's no such thing as the world as we know it, or the knowledge in the world is completely neutral. It is not.
It is not. Right. No, so that's the difficult part, right? Because the people doing it have their own biases, which actually is embedded already into the various technologies.
Yeah, even the knowledge itself is biased. Is biased.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Well, okay, so I've got one more question, but I'm going to just take a look at, we've got a question here. I hear that you have been interested in gender equality in those days, which is quite rare in those days. I'm just reading. I'm curious what influenced you to have that interest in gender equality?
I think a lot of it starts when you're very young. My parents were very strong social activists. My father almost joined the Communist Party in China. My mother volunteered in China to join the army. She actually disguised herself as a boy. And somehow they found out and she didn't get. But my parents, I mean, they were activists even to the extent that, I don't know how many of you know my history. I got thrown out of university at Stanford. I got thrown into jail in America and jail in Singapore for being an activist. So I think from very, very young, my parents already inculcated in all of us the sense of social justice. And that leads to racial justice and gender justice. That's as a theoretical construct, right? We were never led to believe that, oh, men are better than women. That's even from a theoretical point of view. Then, of course, I had a very strong-willed mother. Then I had a strong-willed girlfriend and now wife. And then I have a strong-willed daughter and a very strong-willed granddaughters and so on. So I think it's along the way, if you have the intellectual receptiveness that social justice is something that's absolutely necessary, or to turn around, social injustice just irks you and eats at you, and you need to be active to change situations of social injustice. And then you see this happening to women. Yeah. And then you see how liberating it is and how wonderful it is as a man to see the women that you love themselves grow, and how Claire and I grew together and she grew as a woman. I see my daughter and all that growing. Then you see both sides. You see the side of how you want to work actively to change that social injustice. That's on the side of wanting to destroy the barriers to social injustice. Then you see how if you ever do break down those barriers, you see what a wonderful world it is to see women who are empowered and flourish in every way that they can. Then it encourages you to do more.
Yeah, wow, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. Another question. Are men doing enough to lead on gender equality and create solutions to their problems? Or are women still the driving force behind solving male problems? Was this written by a man?
I think that's very interesting, because I think one has to be fair to us men along the way. I think this is hard to generalize. I think there are clearly a lot of inbuilt, innate issues that men have about accepting women as their equals. Less so now in the workplace. I think that's, at least in Europe and in other countries, Singapore also, in the workplace, less in the boardroom. I think the idea that I can work alongside a woman, or I can even have a woman CEO, that's pretty embedded in most men. I think at the personal relationship level, it's harder. And that's something men and women have to work out. From a male point of view, I'd also like to speak up for the male, because many men feel that they're emasculated and disrespected if the woman is the equal. And we grow up with the idea that often we have to be the dominant partner. We have to show our masculinity. So how do you have an understanding between a man and a woman in a private relationship that yes, you are more masculine. Yes, I do, as a woman, want to feel protected. Yeah, chivalry is not dead in an equal world. Every time I go to a place, I have to open the door for my wife, even though she says she's damn my equal, but she won't open the door for me. So chivalry is not dead, and women very often have double standards. Yeah. I think we men know that, and it's not fair on us as men, right? We try to do our best, and sometimes it's not enough. And then other times, you want us to be the strong man and assertive guy, dominating force, and you to be the weak person who can sort of look up to the man. And then other times, when we were like that, you say you're over-dominating. So we feel emasculated. So my whole point here is that I think it's a continuing journey. And I think the world has reached a point where it should no longer be an issue of should men do more or should women do more. I think there is a recognition universally already that men and women have to be equal and must be treated equally. That's universal. Now, what about our own innate biases? We have to deal with these individually. And I can only say it has to be a collaborative effort. It cannot be one where it's mandated. Like I've got equal women on our boards as men. We've got 40% of our managers are women. But I would resist any regulation from the stock exchange saying that there's a quota of women on the boards, because I think that disrespects women, that it's affirmative action and we just have to have more women and so on. I think there needs to be much more awareness from men themselves. But on the other hand, women must rise up to the challenge also. So it's very collaborative, and I don't think it is one or the other.
Okay, so it's not a zero-sum game.
No, it's
not. For me, yes, absolutely. There's a question. Thank you for sharing the dynamics of your relationship with Claire. Are the dynamics similar with your children and their spouses? And also, how does this relate, if at all, to your point about younger men falling back and struggling today?
I think, well, you're asking me to comment about my kids and their spouses? Oh boy, I've got
safe space.
How many spies are you have in this room here now? I do see, though, a big difference between my cohort, my fellow septuagenarians, and their relationship with their wives, because I know most of the male side and their relationships, and the relationship between my children and their spouses. And I would say it's gone through a sea change of differences. And I would say the relationship, well, first of all, the child caring part is hugely different. The men I see nowadays take part in child raising not with grudging acceptance, but with delight. And it's a wonderful thing to see, partly because I delighted in it and so on, but I knew many of my other friends and colleagues thought it was like, why do I have to change diapers? It's no fun and blah, blah, and so on. Now you see younger men really delighting. It's not just I have to accept this as part of my job, but they do delight in child rearing, and I think that's so critical because they now realize, as women do, that the young the young years of your child pass so quickly and they miss out on so much. So I think the men have changed, but male-female relationships at the personal level have changed a lot, I think. And that's, I think, definitely for the better.
Okay. Well, yeah, we used to say a man is not a financial plan. So especially when women are now increasingly earning more than their spouse, I must say. Okay. While women have made some progress, men have largely stagnated, as you said, leading to misogyny and incel movements. You mentioned that. So what can be done to address this?
I think it can only come from the men themselves. And we know for a fact in some communities, or particularly in the US and elsewhere, in some communities there are not a lot of good male role models. And that obviously is a downward spiral for the young men themselves. So I think it has to start with the men themselves. You don't see any male movement to sensitize ourselves. I mean, the only men who ever go to any kind of group counseling session would be alcoholics who are forced to do so. Otherwise, you're not going to find a group of men sitting around sort of talking about ourselves. Men are just not so open. Yeah. But I think there has to be a growing openness about that, perhaps in schools, perhaps with younger children when they're... I don't think you have that so easily now, but I think it is a potential problem. I think younger women today are far more aware of the dilemmas that women are facing, and opportunities, and very much aware of the transformational journey that women have made in the last 50 years. They're all well aware of that. Your daughters are well aware of that. How many of your sons are aware that the male journey towards what I would call, what you've called, I think, positive masculinity, the male journey towards positive masculinity has not been a very rich one or very deep one. And much of male masculinity among young people today, unfortunately, is all reinforced by social media or by very violent games or by pornography. You find, I mean, probably everywhere in the world, that now with the proliferation of pornography, I'm not against pornography from the moral point of view, but when a young person's idea of what should be joyful sex between a man and a woman, or a young man and a young woman, when they see it in such violent forms as you see it in pornography, and the way men treat women in pornography, that's the only thing that they know about. And the only way they know about dealing with aggressiveness is through games where you shoot and kill each other. So there's got to be a lot more understanding among fathers as to what our boys are going through. You find that a lot of mothers, and completely uneducated mothers, like Claire's mother was not educated, but Claire's mother, as I think many of you here would know, that your own mothers may not have been that educated or having high positions, but they really taught you about the dilemma of a woman, the challenges of a woman, the aspirations of a woman. How many fathers have done that to their sons? And I think we need to do that much more than we have. Otherwise, women are going to leave men behind, more leaving men behind emotionally than anything else. And the male sense of being lost is going to bounce back against all of us. And you're really beginning to see that in America.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to move on to a little bit about, you mentioned having your CEOs or your GMs being able to be mobile, going from country to country. There's a question on having female CEOs. Don't you feel that they are often too emotional about their decisions? Oh, okay. Okay, so the preamble was, there's never going to be equality. Men and women are born differently. Behavior, physical abilities are different. We can never be equal. having female CEOs, don't you feel that they are often too emotional about their decisions?
I will give you, I see, a lot of the women say, oh, because whoever asked that is not woke. Because female CEOs are as rational and as cold-blooded as male.
Oh, yeah.
I would tell you that is not true. I think that's a very honest answer, because I do think, and you may criticize me for it, but I said at the very beginning, I celebrate the difference between men and women. And I think that anybody here who's ever got a wife, a boyfriend, or girlfriend, or whatever, would think that women are not as emotional as men. I would think you're not entirely right. But I think women are more emotional, but it means you're also more empathetic. You're also, emotional is not a bad word. Yeah. But I think that if we generally accept that for whatever reason, I don't want to say it's biological, whether it is through culture or through nurturing when you're younger, so on, I think generally women are more emotional. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? It's made here as if it's a bad thing. It may not be. To be more emotional, to me, means more empathetic. Now, I think what it does mean, though, is that every person, every woman should recognize, am I more emotional? In what way is that positive? That I build up my empathy, which is more than what my male colleagues have. But at the same time, I should perhaps react to situations more slowly. I take time out because I might be more inclined towards making an emotional reaction. By the same token, men should not pride themselves on being so rational and cold-blooded. You think that's a good attribute? It may not be, because it's also quite negative. So men should also say, what are the things about us that is quite good? But the same thing that we are supposed to be, so-called rational, is not necessarily a plus point. That when we talk to a lot of people, I notice a lot of my male managers, they don't read the subtext of the person that they're talking to. They just think they're talking about work. They just talk to you, this is work, this is rational. But they don't hear that what the other person is saying about work, there's embedded in it a lot of subtext that women can pick up. So I would say every male, every female has to recognize, and also the degree of emotionalism is also different. It's not universal that all women are more emotional. Some men are more emotional than other men. Some men are more emotional than women, and I've known quite a few. I think every person has to know about their own personality and how you need to adjust your personality for those parts that you are strong in, and how to adjust it for those parts where you're not at your best.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question, and that is about SAGE. If you could issue one challenge or a call to action to the leaders across sectors as they leave SAGE, what would that be? What is a call to action? And then we can all come back again next year in September.
Somehow people always want to ask that kind of question. And I've given an answer that's a bit too. Somebody actually said, I see you, Mr. Ho, so often in these fireside talks. When did you ever say something different? Right? I don't know who it is. But there are two parts, I guess, I would say. One is the one that I've been saying all along, and I really, truly do believe in, because I always talk to younger audiences like yourself. And this is the one I've been saying, so some of you may have heard before. And the one thing I would tell all of you is don't sleepwalk through life. That generally we don't realize that even if you are thinking you're not that young, you may be in your 40s, you may even be in your 50s, you don't recognize that very quickly you're going to be in your 70s. And that you will think back and ask yourself, what did I do in my life? Not was I powerful, not was I rich, not was I this or that, but what did I make of my life? Or did I just sleepwalk through it in my 40s and 50s? I woke up in the morning, I ate my breakfast, I changed, I drove to work, and then, did I live a very mundane life? And by being non-mundane, it doesn't mean you have to be a jet setter. It means that did you find the joy in the daily things that you did? So that's one thing I say. But the other one I would say is probably, I think it's very necessary for you to dream at night, but to wake up the next morning. I think the two are like yin and yang. That if you don't, even at my age of 73, if I don't have dreams about the things I want to do, then my life is going to begin to go downhill. There's still so many things I want to do. Those are my dreams. But I wake up the next morning and I have the reality of knowing, differentiating between the dream and reality, and how you can bridge that difference. How can you still in your life be full of dreams, but not so lost that you don't realize that you also have a reality to deal with, and you must try throughout your life to converge the dreams and your actual life. So that's what I would say. Dream at night, but wake up the next morning.
Dream at night, wake up the next morning.
And in between, don't sleepwalk.
And don't sleepwalk through life. So thank you so very much. Please help me to thank Kwon Peng. Thank you very much.